This segment of the Alice Stewart Show is brought to you by Aero Plumbing. For all your household or business plumbing needs, call Aero Plumbing at 1-866-PLUMBER or schedule an appointment online at aeroplumbing.net.
35 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock on a Friday morning, I'm Rex Nelson, sitting in for Alice Stewart here on Fox News Radio 96.5 FM, The Voice. Again, we are your station for the 2014 Battle of the Ravine. We are on the air with coverage beginning live from Arkadelphia tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, and we are honored to have one of the preeminent sports historians in the state of Arkansas and a man that knows this rivalry as good or better than anyone, and that's my old friend Mike Dugan from Hot Springs. Mike, thank you for joining us this morning early on a Friday to talk a little Battle of the Ravine.
It's always fun to talk football this time of year, and on the eve of the Battle of the Ravine, you know, your hair starts standing up on the back of your neck a little bit. You're ready to go. You know,
you have to, though, go back to 1975 to find a time when the records were this good. That year, Henderson came in undefeated. Ouachita came in with just one loss. This year, Ouachita comes in undefeated. Henderson comes in with just one loss, both nationally ranked. So it's always a great game, but we've got to turn back the clock 39 years to find anything quite like this.
The parallels to that 1975 game are just amazing, too, as the two teams come in, because I think the winner will have a playoff berth in the Division II playoffs. The loser probably going to have to settle for a lesser game in the postseason. And the same thing was on the line in 1975. Yep. There were only 4 teams in the NAIA playoffs, and Ouachita took the golden ring that year and hosted a game in horrible weather in Arkadelphia that year. But the game that year, Henderson, I think most people thought was a prohibitive favorite. This year, the two teams come in fairly evenly matched. Both teams have great strengths. Both teams have some glaring weaknesses, in my opinion. But this should be some game tomorrow, and I hope the weather cooperates with us and we have a good day for it.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a balmy 46 or 47 degrees, which compared to today and yesterday actually sounds pretty nice if the sun's shining, Mike.
It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that was a cold and gray day back in 1975. You were there.
It was. I was on the Ouachita sideline that year as a high school student. Our friend, the late Max Sisson, which you have to understand, in those days, for a number of years, they played what they called a joint homecoming, and for several years, they played it every year at Henderson Stadium because it was the newer, the bigger, the nicer stadium, and so it was Ouachita's home game, but it was being played at then Haygood Stadium, now Carpenter Haygood Stadium, and I can remember just like yesterday Max Sisson coming on that PA and saying winds out of the northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour, game time temperature 29 degrees. So tomorrow really is going to be balmy compared to that gray 75 game.
Well, it will, and of course the artificial turf plays a role now that we didn't have in those days, and some of that is good and some of that is bad. You know, I can still picture some of those games on the old turf on those gray days in November, and it was football as football was meant to be played, but I know teams today, and even though Ouachita has a great running attack, and Henderson, of course, that passing attack, that turf does play a major role in that. And I think tomorrow the field will be no factor. The weather should be no factor. And what's going to be interesting is the two coaches who, in my opinion, are two of the best in the state of Arkansas. Will go at each other all day long. And I actually, so many people have asked me about the game this week, Rex. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. You know, emotions pull you
Hard
one way.
to tell.
And I've had the opportunity to see Ouachita 3 times and Henderson 3 times. And they're both good ball clubs.
Well, you and I were there in an era when we had 2 Arkansas sports legends. They're both gone now. Both inductees into the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame. That, of course, the late Ralph Sporty Carpenter at Henderson and the late Buddy Benson at Ouachita. True legendary Arkansas football coaches. But now, like you said, Scott Maxfield at Henderson, Todd Knight at Ouachita. And if you take all of the college programs in the state percentage-wise, those are the two winningest programs in the state over the past 5 seasons, and they're both in the same town.
It's amazing, isn't it? And the Great America Conference seems to always come down to what happens in Arkadelphia. And, of course, for you and me, we wouldn't want it any other way.
Absolutely. Last year, the game went to 3 overtimes.
One of the greatest games I've ever seen.
I was going to say, period. And you and I have had the good fortune to go into bowl games, to seeing a lot of Division I games. Rates right up there with one of the greatest college football games, period, that I've ever watched at any level.
It did, and I've got to tell you, the atmosphere in the crowd and people ringing the field at A.U. Williams Field was just amazing. And David Sharp, your good friend.
Yeah, you tell the great story of him trying to keep people off the berm and finally giving up because they kept coming.
I told him, I said, David, this is not going to work. Just let it go. And I joined the fans on the berm there in the end zone.
You know, we commented on the radio last year, Mike. By the end of the game, there were actually hundreds of people standing outside the fence along the highway. I'm convinced people in the area listening on the radio were saying, we've got to get over there for the end of this thing.
And I think people driving through just said, what's going on? And the amazing crowd, it was listed at a little over 12,000. I think that might have even been a small estimate. And I thought before the weather impacted tomorrow's game that we could look at 15. Mm-hmm. And we still could if the sun pops out, if it's not doing anything as far as precipitation. I think the crowd could be amazing tomorrow. Of course, Henderson dropped the one game to Harding. And that was a great game for Harding.
Just in the last minute. Yes, what a great ending that was. Harding did a wonderful
job. Yes, the rushing attack was hard to contain. And, of course, now there's going to be a lot of Bisons, and that's with an S, of course, as we've learned over the years, pulling for the red and gray tomorrow because a ready victory would give them a share of the conference title.
Be a 3-way tie if they go ahead and take care of business against Arkansas Tech. Mike, hang on. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the great history of the Battle of the Ravine, which dates back all the way to 1895.
Sounds great.
Arkansas sports historian Mike Dugan of Hot Springs is our guest. More coming your way. We are sponsored by Arrow Plumbing. Arrow Plumbing at 501-588-3200. Hope you don't have any frozen pipes, but you might this morning with temperatures in the 20s. 501-588-3200 or arrowplumbing.net.